Hello and welcome to today's Office Hours presentation. This is your host, Paul Hoyt. Our Office Hours presentations are a relaxed, informal mentoring program that we hold every Monday at noon Pacific time. All these recording slides and exercises are archived in the members area of our website. And for now, all these recordings are available on the YouTube channel at youtube.com/user/Paul Hoyt. The reasons we do these office hours presentations is that we know that being a successful business owner can be a great experience, but we also know that it's tough, that you really need education, training, tools, and team to be successful. And we want you to get to know us because when you do, you'll know that first and most importantly, we really do care about you. We want you to succeed in life in every area of life, whatever that means to you. We want you to find the greatness, the happiness, the divinity within yourself, and then remember it, embrace it, and live it every single day. Our passion is to increase the survival rate, accelerate the growth rate, and reduce the struggle rate of businesses in America. And our vision is to help millions of CEOs and entrepreneurs accelerate their business growth and enjoy greater harmony and balance in their lives. If you find these office hours presentations to be beneficial to you, please pass the word. Let your friends, your other folks that you know who are business owners or who aspire to be a business owner know about them so they can get the quality education, training, and mentoring that we can provide right now for free. All they need to do is sign up to the website. Our office hours agenda is usually an in-depth discussion of a business success principle. We offer some closing remarks, any special offers, and an invitation for next week's session, and then we go into open Q&A and coaching. So as you're listening to the presentation today, if you have any comments at all or questions about the subject matter, please note that, put that into the chat log, raise your hand up, and we'll address those questions at the end of the broadcast. And then if we run out of questions that are relevant to this specific material today, we'll just open it up and we'll talk about anything and everything that you want to do, what you want to talk about. We invite you to join us in the Awaken CEO communities on both LinkedIn and Facebook, where I publish a business success principle of the day 4 days a week on Facebook and LinkedIn, and do an energy of the day posting every day on Facebook, where when I wake up in the morning, we try to share something insightful or inspirational. And as part of my daily discipline, I've been doing that 935 days in a row. Today's topic is who gets what? Sharing revenues with your partners. We always try to relate the subject matter of the day to one or more of the key performance areas of success. And today it's all about financial management, about what portion of the revenues you have, how much money that you actually share with your business partners, but it's also about leadership, because one of the primary responsibilities of the CEO of the business, of the leader of the business, is to come up with a great business model and to determine who those right partners and affiliates are and make the decisions necessary to gain strength through working with others. We also relate the subject matter of the day to one or more of the levels of performance that we define in the Awakened CEO system. Those 3 levels of performance are the mindset, which is your beliefs and perspectives, your methods, which is your plans, processes, and your procedures, and your momentum, which means taking action repetitively over time to accelerate your velocity. And today we're going to talk primarily about mindset and about methods. It's about attitudes that you can have with your partners and about sharing revenues and costs and getting other people to help you grow your business, and the methods by which you determine how much of those costs, how much of that cash that's flowing into your business that you put out to your partners in some way. But we're not going to talk a lot about momentum and getting into action. We'll talk about momentum in other office hours presentations. So here's the agenda for today's conversation. We'll start out talking about business model basics. We'll talk about principles of outsourcing. We'll talk about simple service business models, complex service business models, simple product business models, information products business models, and then we're going to wrap it all up with the bottom line. First of all, some business model basics. Number one is it really costs money to make and deliver your products and services. Every single company has overhead that's part of that cost. Every company has a cost to their sales and marketing, and every company has a cost to their delivery. And when we understand how we make money and how we are using revenues in our business today, then and only then can we safely engage partners to help us grow our business. So here's some of those principles about transferring cost from ourselves to our partners. First of all, the term partner is really generic. It can refer to contractors, suppliers, or legal partners, and in some cases it actually refers to employees who work with us as well. The assumption is if we're spending money on things today, in other words, they have a cost to us, that they also have a value to us, and when we transfer functions to other parties, that we do that understanding what the cost is that we would pay to do it ourselves, and therefore the value that function has to us, and we transfer it to somebody else. And the key is to understanding the value of those functions by understanding what portion of your overall costs that you're transferring out to another person. One of my very favorite people is a gentleman named Jack Stack, who talks about the great game of business. Jack is from Springfield, Missouri, and I lived in Springfield, Missouri from 1980 to 1990, where Jack was the CEO of Springfield Remanufacturing Company, and I think he's still the CEO of that company. And he talked about and invented and started championing the open business plan concept, where he took over a struggling business and decided that the best way to turn that business into being profitable was by sharing the metrics of the business with everybody that works there. That's right, he shared how much everything cost, he shared how much the payroll was going to cost, he shared how much profit that they wanted to make, he shared what all of the different departmental cost functions are with everybody at the business, which in the 1980s, when I was living in Springfield and he was coming out with this concept, was absolute heresy. You absolutely didn't want to let the people who worked for you know how much profit that you were making, or how much your total payroll was, or how much your cost of sales was, and how much your direct cost was before. The school of thought before he came across in the 1980s was that you were far better off keeping those things secret, and you didn't want people to know them because you didn't want to have conversations about the issues and a lot of other factors as well about why we kept those things secret. And unfortunately, even though he championed the open business plan and championed the whole concept of the great game of business and showed at his company how effective that was in turning a failing company into one that was highly profitable, it's still not taught in schools. It's still not taught in even some colleges. The business model information that I'm going to share with you today took me years and years and years to determine because it's just not talked about anywhere else. So hang on to your hats. This, I think, is going to be a real eye-opener for many of you on the call today. First, let's talk about a simple service business model. And by simple service, I mean a coaching business, a consulting business, somebody who's a painter or a contractor, generally a solopreneur business where somebody hangs out their shingle and says, I can do quality work, come hire me and let me help you in ways that I can help you. With a business, simple service business model, here are some of the components of cost and correspondingly some of the value that you might be able to share with a partner and some of the ways that you might outsource these functions. First of all, let's talk about profit. I really think it's a good idea for you to have profit built into your model, which means after you pay yourself what you want to pay yourself, after you pay your employees and your partners and all of your overhead and all of your other costs, that's the amount that you want to have left over that you can use to build the business and grow the business. You can put that away in a savings account. You can draw it as bonus income. You can do a lot with that profits, but it's always a good idea to plan to make a profit so that you have that extra money available to do with whatever you want to do with it. Take a vacation, you put it in a savings account, take some of the chips off the table, as they say, or invest in the growth of your business. Every company has some overhead. By overhead, we mean insurance, we mean some marketing expenses, especially those month-to-month incurred marketing expenses. Could mean your administrative expenses if you hire somebody to help you out with admin and generally take care of the business of the business. It could be the automobiles, mileage, travel expenses, entertainment, meals. There are 30 different categories that go into general and administrative expenses, which I'm just calling overhead expenses in here. And hopefully in a simple service model, we hold that down to 15% of revenues. You also have sales and marketing expenses, which includes the costs that you have to spend on brand awareness marketing and advertising, and on lead generation marketing and advertising, on anything that you spend to help you get leads in the door that then you convert into prospects and then convert into actual customers. And at most simple service businesses, delivery is about 50%. So what this means is that if you're making $100,000 in sales, that we want to set aside, and we're going to reserve $10,000 of that for profits, $15,000 of that for overhead, and $25,000 of that for sales and marketing, and $50,000 of that for delivery. So on a monthly basis, that's $800 or so worth of profit. That's $1,250 or so of overhead. That's $2,000, a little more than that, $2,100 or so in sales and marketing, and $4,800 or so, $5,000 in delivery costs every single month. So what this also means is that if you're a solopreneur in a business and you're able to actually execute this business model, is that you're going to make between 60 and 70K. You're going to make all of the cost or all of the value of the delivery. You're going to make maybe a little bit in sales and marketing where you didn't have to pay somebody else's commissions to actually close a deal, and hopefully you'll make the profits. This is very, very attractive to people who want to hang out their own shingle. I can make $100,000 a year, or in gross revenues, I can take home 50, 60, 70K to myself, and it feels pretty darn good. The challenge is that it's really, really hard to do. It's really hard for you to have this level of business model being a solopreneur, because there are so much overhead relative to the revenues that you have. So solopreneurs have a tendency to have overhead that's in excess of 15%. They have a tendency to have sales and marketing fees that are in excess of 25%. It's not at all uncommon for overhead in sales and marketing to run 50, 60% of overall revenues, so that the profits are much less, or the delivery costs, the amount that you actually pay yourself for delivering the services, turns out to be more. So generally speaking, while it looks really good on paper, a solopreneur has a challenge making this much money on $100,000 in revenue. So let's investigate that just a little bit more by looking at a slightly more complex service business model. In this one, we have the same profit of 10%, we have the overhead of 15%, but we differentiate sales and lead generation, or sales and marketing, and split that across to 10% for sales and 15% for lead gen, and then delivery for 50%. Generally speaking, we do this because lead generation at a service business model can be very expensive. If you're making $100,000 in revenue, to have lead generation at 15% means you're spending $1,200, $1,500 a month on marketing activities that help you generate your leads into the business. And by the way, those marketing activities can take a lot of different forms. Here at my business, the marketing activities are some of the infrastructure costs that I have associated with the marketing systems that we have. It has a little bit to do with advertising. It has a lot to do with the money that I pay to others to help with the office hours programs and the other lead generation programs I have. It has to do with the travel and entertainment and expenses that I incur whenever I go to a workshop or a conference that may have the opportunity for me to generate leads from that. It can take a lot of different forms. But in sales could be the amount that I pay to others for helping me close deals. So at our particular company, with a fairly simple service model, we pay referral fees and affiliate fees. We pay 10, 15, or 20% depending upon how much of the sales and marketing, particularly the sales effort, that the other person took off of our plate. So for example, if somebody just hands me a deal, I get a phone call, and this happens, not as often as I would like, but every once in a while, somebody picks up the phone and gives me a call and says, "Hey, Paul, I was just talking to Susie, and Susie says I need to hire you to write a business plan. When do we get started?" Man, I love that. I absolutely love that, and I'm going to handsomely reward Susie for that splendid referral. She essentially did all the sales for me, did all the legwork for me, took all the risk out of it for me, and she deserves to be compensated for that. So I am happy to share a portion of those revenues in that particular example, 20% of the revenues that I enjoy with Susie, because she provided the value to me of selling and generating the lead. And in some cases, if it's a really high margin product, which is not common in a service model, I might even share more than 20% with her. So that's a good example about how I would share revenues with a partner, in that case Susie, because they added tremendous value from me and removed some of my cost, not all of my cost, because I still have the costs associated with brand awareness advertising, but I don't have the time and effort costs necessary to find that lead, to turn that lead into a prospect, and then to close that deal. So that's kind of what a simple service business model looks like. Here's a question for you, by the way, that I want you to ponder for just a couple of seconds. And that is, if I'm delivering all of the products and services myself, and I'm enjoying the revenues from the profits as well, and I decide that I don't want to deliver services anymore, but rather I want to outsource the delivery to other people. For example, I've been a coach for a long time, and I don't want to be in the coaching business. I want to hire other coaches or outsource the delivery of the coaching assignments to other people. How big of a company do I need to have in order for me to enjoy as much revenue and as much personal income as I would enjoy if I were doing it all myself? I'd like to do the Jeopardy theme song now, but I'll just let you ponder that for a second, because that's a question that I get asked a lot. If I'm not doing all the delivery, or if I'm doing none of the delivery, how much business do I have to have in order for me to enjoy as much personal income as I would have if I were just doing it all myself? And the answer is, by the way, about 3 times. So in this particular model, if I were delivering it all myself and only paying a little bit to the outside for somebody to help with sales and to sales for that I might enjoy the 10% that comes from the profit. I might enjoy and be responsible for some of the commissions, and I might get all of the delivery myself. So I might make, $60K, something like that. In order for me to make $60K, if other partners of my team are doing all the delivery, then all I'm doing is selling and taking the profits, then this 20% of the 100K would only be 20,000. So I need to have $300,000 in revenue in order for me to generate 60K of personal income, if my personal income is only coming from profits and sales, and the rest of that is going out to partners. So of course that's a big problem as you grow if you're a service business, is because somewhere in between I'm taking all the delivery for myself, and now I've got 3 people that are delivering, is this whole I'm outsourcing part of the delivery to somebody else. When you're outsourcing part of the delivery to somebody else and you haven't reached 3 times the revenues that you would like to have, then it's very difficult for you to make as much personal income as you'd like to have. So you have to just bite the bullet, You have to focus a lot of extra time on sales and on marketing so that you can quickly ramp your revenues from $100,000 a year to $300,000 a year, with all of the services being provided by other people, or most of them being provided by other people, in order for you to enjoy the same level of personal income that you would enjoy with $100,000 worth of revenues if you were the only delivery person. That was a little complex, but I hope that you stayed with me a little bit. And of course, I'm happy to answer questions about that at the end of the call. But it's not as complex as service businesses can get. I've had the occasion to work for very large professional services organizations, and their real business model is a lot more complex than the simple business model that we've talked about. They have profit and they have overhead, and management takes a lot. They have budgets for facilities and for intellectual property or product development. They have budgets. They split apart marketing and lead generation. They split apart sales management and sales, and delivery, instead of being 40% of revenues, is typically down around, instead of being 50% of revenues, is typically around 40%. In fact, I've seen some very large service organizations where delivery was down at 33 or even 35%. So you would have a service provider generating $100,000 of revenue per year, but they themselves were only doing $35,000 or $40,000 in revenue. And the real way that that works is not at that level. It works with a service provider generating $300,000 a month or year in revenue, and them enjoying $100,000 worth of income. That's the way that works with a very white-collar business model. It can also work with a lower cost, blue-collar business model as well, when you're paying your service providers, the people actually doing the work, $10 or $15 an hour. You're only paying them $20,000 or $30,000 a year. Then it can also work. But it's a real challenge for, I would say, the white collar or even the gray collar business provider to ramp up and pay their service providers more than 40% if they have a very complex business model, very complex services business model. But enough about services businesses. What if we're making a product? What about then? How do we share revenues with our partners if we have a physical product? Let's take a look at a simple product business model. This simple product business model is intended to be something that is not sold by anybody else. It's just sold by you. So you're making furniture and you're selling it at a craft fair. You have a lemonade stand and you're selling lemonade, by the street corner. You're selling roses by the street corner. Something that's very similar, but there's not an extra tier in there. With this, the profit, again, I encourage you to build profit into your business model at 10%, overhead 15%, sales and marketing 25%, and the product cost itself, or the cost of goods sold, is a combined 50%. So instead of paying somebody to deliver the service, you're paying some other partner or supplier 50% of your revenues in order to actually give you the products that you're going to sell for somebody else. So an example is, I go to a florist and I buy a dozen roses for $12, and I go sell those same dozen roses for $25 or $2.10 or $2.50 each on the street corner. My cost of goods sold is 50% of the total retail value of all of the products that I sell. And this is a very simple product business model that, by the way, is almost never done. Whenever you bring a consumer product to market or you bring a commercial product to market, you almost always have some aspect of your revenues taken up by your retail partners, by those people who put your products on their shelves and sell to the end customer. In that case, the retailer's revenue is almost always 50% or more of the retail price. Your profit is only 5% of the retail revenue, or 10% of your revenue. Your overhead is half as much, at 7.5%, sales and marketing 12.5%, cost of goods sold at 25%, and again, that's of the total retail revenue. Your revenue, because you're not enjoying this 50% of the revenue that your retailers are enjoying, your revenue is 50% of the retail revenue, and of that, 25% of the retail revenue, or half of the revenue that you enjoy, is the cost of goods sold itself. So let's take a look at what that means. That means if you're looking at a $20 product on the shelf at Best Buy, at Macy's, at, not quite Costco because they have a slightly different business model, but on the shelves at a regular department store or a regular big box retail store, you can be sure that that $20 product probably only costs the manufacturer $2 to $2.50 to make. They probably made the product for $2.50. They sold it to the retail channel for $5, and they made it for, my math was a little off there. They made it for $5. They sold it for the retail channel at $10, and then the retail channel sold it for $20. Pardon my arithmetic. I was thinking of a $10 item instead of a $20 item. So let me make sure I go through that again. If it's $20 on the shelves, it's probably being made for $5 or less. It's being sold to the distributor, in this case the retail outlet, for $10, and they're selling it for $20. Usually, however, it's not even that simple. Usually, well, from a product point of view, is that you make, if it's a $100 product, you make it for $25. You sell the product at wholesale for $50, and the reseller sells it for $100. Usually, however, the business model is a little more complex than that. Usually, there is this little person in between here called the distributor, which is also known as the middleman. Some company or some person that is in between you and the retailer. In that particular case, they're going to take like 10% of the sales price of the product itself, or 10% of your revenues and 5% of the overall sales price, so that the retailer's revenue might only be 47.5% of the total retail price. The distributor gets 5%. Your profit is only 2.5%. Your overhead is 7.5% to sales and marketing, or 12.5%, and the cost of goods sold is 25% of retail, much like it was before. That's not at all comfortable because your profits are too darn low. So what you like to try to do then is to shrink the retailer's revenue to 45% and the distributor revenue to 5%, so that you can enjoy the same 5% profit, 7.5% overhead, 12.5% sales and marketing, and 25% cost of goods sold. But your retailers don't like that at all, because it screws with their model, really messes them up if they're not making 50% with 100% markup or 50% gross margin on the products that they sell. So what you really want to do here is shrink your product cost. You want the retailer's revenue to be 50%, the distributor's revenue to be 5%, your profit to be 5%, overhead 7.5%, sales and marketing at 12.5%, and cost of goods sold at 20%. So what we want to see happen is, if you're selling that $20 item, instead of making it for $5, we want to make it for $4, so that we can have the retail options, so that we can use distributors and pay them what they want to be paid, so that we can use retailers and pay them what they want to be paid, and we can still make some margin. So whenever I coach my product customers, I always coach them on getting their gross margins as high as possible and getting their costs as low as possible, because the 25% simple product business model that we looked at earlier doesn't work very well when you're engaging in a lot of different distribution channels. For example, Home Shopping Network, they want 55% or maybe even more than that of the retail price in order for you to push something through a Home Shopping Network. I have a client who's in the accessories business, the women's fashion accessories business, and it surprised both of us to find out several years ago that the accessories gross margin wants to be 55%, where generally speaking, department store gross margins are 50%. There are some products that they make 40% on, and some products that they make 55 or even 60% on, and it just so happens that women's fashions, accessories, belts and jewelries and those sorts of things, scarves, they want to make more than 50% on. They want to make 55% on. So that was a bit of a surprise to us several years ago, and a bit of an unpleasant surprise as well, because we had created our original business models around a 50% gross margin, and we had to make some adjustments in our prices and try to drive down our costs in order for the business to be profitable while we were selling through that distribution channel that we really wanted to sell through. So hopefully that adds a little bit of information about consumer products. I've said on many broadcasts before that consumer products is one of the most challenging businesses there are, and this is one of the reasons, is because very few people understand the importance of having a consumer product that has an extremely high gross margin, that you're selling a product for $20 but you're making it for $1, or you're selling a product for $100 but you're making it for $15. And if you can do that, if you can sell a product for $100 and make it for $15, it opens up all kinds of partnering opportunities for you. It opens up, essentially all of the different distribution channels, the catalogs, the boutique department stores, the big box stores, the home shopping network, selling it yourself online. It opens up all of those different business models for you because you have enough gross margin in order to share those revenues with your partners in the way that they want to have their revenues. You become a very distribution-friendly business when you have a lot of profit built into your business model. And speaking of profits built into business models, software businesses and information product businesses have a lot of profit built into their business models because they have an almost zero cost of delivery. So here is a classic information product business model where profits are 20%, not 10%, that overheads are 15% and sales and marketing are 25%, but they pay affiliate fees for up to 50%. So if you're seeing an information product that you are distributing yourself, that you've made, or that somebody else is distributing via an email broadcast, via presence on a stage somewhere, or via a seminar or a webinar, you may figure that if somebody's selling an information product for $1,000, the affiliate who is making that offer via email or sponsoring that introduction to their database via webinar or seminar, or who is putting this person on their stage, is making probably 50% of that revenue if it's an information product, and in some cases if it's a software product. So that's one of the reasons that people love the information products business. And of course, we love to get the training and the mentoring that we need to make transformations in our own personal life and to make transformations in our business. And it's a really good business to get into. So my encouragement to everybody is that if you can put an information product, if you can get into the information products business or add an information product to your existing line of services and products, because it is extremely high margin, like almost zero cost of delivery, it can really accelerate your business model and really make you a lot more attractive to other partners in the world today. So here's the bottom line. The bottom line is that there are a lot of different business models, and believe me, we've just started to explore some of the business models today, with a simple service business model, a slightly more complex business model, and a really complex services business model. We just started to talk about retail models and the role of the middleman and how that impacts your gross margin and how much better off you are with extremely high gross margin physical products. But there are a lot of different business models out there. And you have to know your business model in order to safely have partners and outsource components of your costs to other people. Here's what doesn't work, is that I've got a services business and I really don't know how I'm spending that. So I say to somebody that, whatever revenue, if you'll be a coach working for me, I'll give you 70 or 80% of the revenues that come in. That almost never works. The only way that works is that if the coach is actually finding the business, closing the business, and delivering the business themselves, then they have taken away, 75% of your cost or so, and maybe should enjoy 70% of the 70 to 75% of the revenue that comes through that deal. If they find the deal, close the deal, deliver the deal, manage the deal, and all you did was provide the intellectual property and the mechanism by which they were able to do that, maybe they do get 70 or 75%. But it doesn't work for you to just say anybody that you're going to find the deal, you're going to close the deal, and you're just going to outsource the delivery of the deal to somebody else for 50 or 60% of the deal. It just hardly works. And your business model dramatically impacts your partnering options. So that is the bottom line. This has been a reasonably brief office hours today. In our agenda, we talked about business model basics. We talked about some of the principles about outsourcing. We talked about simple service business models, complex service business models, simple product business models, not really complex product business models, a little bit of information on an information products business model, and the bottom line. So here's your homework and stuff that I'd really like to see you do. First of all, understand your business model and the cost of each one of your functions. And then make a plan to outsource those functions to your partners, to your contractors, to your suppliers, that can be completed at less cost by somebody else, that can be completed at a higher quality by somebody else, things that you simply can't do and things that you don't like to do. And everybody in their business has things that they don't like to do and things that they simply can't do. For example, in my business, I am just not gifted graphically. I have to hire somebody to help with graphics for my business. And Stephanie, who's on the call with us, really assists a lot with that because she's very talented from a graphics point of view. But that's stuff that I simply can't do myself. The other things about business that I see that other people can do with less cost and higher quality than I can do personally, so we outsource those functions as well. I really encourage you to think about finding partners that you can work with to accelerate your growth by outsourcing, by giving to them, by transferring some of the cost that you would normally have if you did it yourself to your business partners, and therefore enjoy greater profits and greater growth in your business. If you're interested, we have several related office hours 33 and 34. We're on a book called The Art of Profitability that talks a lot about how you can structure business models, and a lot of those business model structured conversations have to do with your partners. I encourage you to listen to that. It really is a great book. I can't remember the name of the author. He was Russian. He came up with something like 23 different business models. I came up with another 20 or 30 of them myself that I talked about in The Art of Profitability too. In Office Hours 68, we talked about great agreements. In Office Hours 74, we talked about pricing strategies, which talks a little bit to what we were discussing earlier with regards to margins on products. And in 103, we talked about how to be a great leader. And you can see the relationship of your responsibility and opportunity to get together a really great business model is how that relates to some of the other key best practices that great leaders have with their businesses. In just a minute, we're going to go to open Q&A and coaching, where we're going to entertain comments and questions on the topic of the day, and then any other issues that you want to talk about. I'm really interested to know what your biggest takeaways are and what insights that you may have gained from this presentation, and tell me what you're going to focus on, because publicly declaring a commitment to say, I'm going to work on this, will really help you in actually focusing your time and attention. As business owners, we are torn in a lot of different directions. New ideas, new opportunities coming at us every day, issues and challenges and obstacles that come up every single day. But when we make a public commitment to say, I am going to do this, it really does help us. And by the way, that's one of the real advantages of having a coach on your team, somebody that will hold your feet to the fire and remind you next week about what you committed to do this week. Here at Hoyt Management Group, we have a variety of support services. With some of them, we teach you to do it yourself. With other ones, we do it with you, hold your hand, collaborate with you, cooperate with you, make it happen when we do financial models, business plans, develop sales funnels, develop sales scripts, do all kinds of things we actually do it with you in a joint collaborative effort. And in some cases, there are things that we do for you. We do some website work, we do CFO and bookkeeping services and other services, but by far most of the services that we provide are doing it with you because we really want you to own every word, every number that's in your business plan and the results of all of the engagements that we have, because we want you to be able to carry on without us. We want you to be able to take what we have, let us train you, mentor you, guide you, work with you, and then we want you to be successful whether or not we continue our engagement. Our next office hours is on June the 20th, a week from today. I haven't decided on what the topic is going to be yet. Let me know what topics that you would like for us to address on office hours presentations by going to paulsurvey.com. And in between now and the time that we meet again next week, do your homework. And with that, let's go into open Q&A in coaching. First, comments and questions on the topic of the day, and then any other issues that you want to talk about. Stephanie, do we have any questions or comments?
Got some comments here that it's great content, great takeaway. Let's see. First question. In a services business, how much can I afford to pay referral partners? And how about affiliates?
Affiliates in a services business, the answer to those is basically the same. So in my business model, the maximum that we pay for services business, because it's so labor intensive, is about 20%. But we also have models where we pay 5, 10, or 15%, depending upon the strength of the value of the service or the lead that was provided to us by somebody else. So for example, if you send an email to me and say, Paul, I was talking to this guy the other day and he might be a candidate for your services, you should give him a call. That's not a very warm introduction. It's just kind of an alert as to this person might become a lead. And we need to follow up with them. We need to determine what their need is. We need to build trust and rapport. We didn't get a lot of that credibility building from you, etc. So that's worth 5% or so. On the other hand, if you say invite us to lunch, and when you invite us to lunch, that becomes a very, very warm lead with a very strong introduction, that might be worth 10 or 15%. And as we were talking earlier, if somebody calls me up and says, Paul, I was just talking to Susie, and Susie says, I need to get my business plan done from you. When can we get started? And there essentially is no sales effort or at all on my part. That's worth 20% for me. So that's the same whether it is a referral or as an affiliate. If you ask me to come speak on your stage and what I'm selling is services only with no product components to it, no hybrid components to it that increase my margin, then the maximum I pay is about 20% for those things. Where it becomes a little more complex is if the package that I am selling includes an information product or includes some aspect of services that is much higher margin than delivering coaching or consulting services is, because coaching and consulting is very labor intensive. So hopefully that was helpful to you. To me, in a services business, referral fees and affiliate fees are basically the same thing. And the maximum that I like to go is about 20%. And yeah, if somebody gives me, a significant amount of revenue very, very quickly, it might go just a little bit higher than that. So if any of you out there listening to this would like to give me $100,000 in revenue, just know that that referral fee or that affiliate fee is negotiable, and thank you very much for the call. Stephanie, next question or comment, please.
Got a comment here that you need, it's a benefit for you to consider and plan what the best model for your business is and how to stay profitable with that.
Amen. Amen. Absolutely.
I'm just getting started. I'm sorry, the next question. I'm just getting started. How do I develop my business model?
It's been my privilege to work with literally hundreds of people who are just getting started and help them develop the business model. So usually it begins with, exploration of what the business is, so we understand, is this a products business, is it a services business, or is it a hybrid business? And then almost always it takes a detailed financial model where we really get into the details of how much of each one of the products that you're going to sell, what the margins are on each one of the products, how much services you're going to provide and what the margins is on the services, and then what your cost structure is, how much you're going to pay in commissions, how much you're going to pay in merchant account fees, do you have any royalties or licensing fees, or other things that contribute to the direct costs, and then going through each one of the operating expenses categories, the automobiles, the insurance, the marketing, the board of directors, the employees, the taxes, all of the different categories that are in the operating expenses to come up with the business model itself. And by the way, that there are other things about the business model, as we talked about just a few weeks ago when we did our financial modeling office hours. We also talked about the other ways that companies spend cash that don't have to do with the P&L stuff that we were talking about today, which is fixed assets, accounts receivable, accounts payable impacts that, and inventory, other types of things will impact the cash that you have to have in order to grow the business, but are not directly reflected on the income statement. So to me, always the answer is the best way to do that is to sit down and do a detailed financial model to think through all of the aspects of your business to understand how you are making a profit and to make adjustments to your business model based upon what the financial model shows us and tells us. By the way, most of the time, by most of the time, I mean like 95% of the time, whenever we do a financial modeling activity for a client or with a client, we really come into some insights about the business itself that allow us to tweak the business. We'll find one product that's more profitable than another product. We'll think of some marketing expenses that we were intending to do, like trade shows and conferences, that turn out to be too expensive in the early months of the business, etc. So it's a wonderful opportunity for you to tweak your business model after you have created the financial model. Stephanie, hopefully that was helpful. Next question or comment.
Actually, this is one of my questions and comments. I know that when I was first, when I did my first franchise, I was really struggling with revenue sharing and profits with the creating the shares and all of that stuff, and it became so, it overwhelmed me so quickly, and it really affected my mindset, if that makes sense. It became a real struggle to deal with that. I wondered if you could chat about that, about the, the mind game and the mindset that you have to have when you're considering and creating your revenue, your profit splitting and your revenue sharing, and differentiating between the two.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd be happy to talk to that. In the first part of the presentation today, we talked about the levels of performance, with mindset being at the very top of that. Mindset, methods, and momentum, making sure that you've got your head on straight, making sure that your attitude is right, your perspective is right, your consciousness is right, and then make your plans and then go into action is by far, to us, the very best approach. It's not just the recommended approach, it's not the preferred approach, but I'll go out on the line and say it's the best approach. Make sure that your mindset is right, make sure that your energy is right before you go into that. And I think specifically what you're talking about is the energy of humility. A lot of times we are so proud of who we are and what we know and what we're capable of doing that we're into that, I am a superstar, I've got my warrior energy going, I know so much, I'm capable to be able to deliver, that it's hard also to embrace the humility that every business owner needs to embrace when they start their business. Is that I'm in addition to being really, really good at this and that and something else, you have to be humble about what you don't know. You have to be humble enough to ask for the advice and counsel of others. You have to be humble enough to pay attention to the lessons that the business is trying to teach you. And that curious blend in between super confidence And really open, honest humility is a difficult thing for people to have. I know it's taking me, 50 years to get the level, the blend of confidence and humility that I have in my life right now. But I find that as I focus on both of those, as I focus on having, an even keel in between confidence and humility, as I increase my confidence, also increase my humility, as I increase my humility when I find something that I haven't done very well, to also focus again on the things that I do extremely well so that I can keep those two in balance. That's really, really important. So no matter how strong you are, no matter what an A-plus student you are, no matter how capable you were in corporate America, you could have been an A-plus superstar making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. When it comes to starting and growing your own business, it's really, really important for you to embrace more humility in your life, to be able to ask the questions of other people, to heed the advice of other people, to get yourself a coach, to get yourself a mentor, and make sure that you've got that balance in between confidence and humility. Because just being arrogant and just being confident might have worked for you in a corporate environment where it was very specific and you weren't faced with new things to learn and do every single day, but it will not serve you well whenever you jump out and start in business for yourself. So the mindset of being a learner, about being open to advice, is critically important when you get into an area that you've never been in before. That's when the experience of others and the advice of others means so much to you. Hopefully that was helpful, Stephanie.
Yes, it was, absolutely. Another piece was I found that for me and for some of my shareholders, when actually for another business, when we were working out revenue sharing, it became there was a whole level of greed, I guess. I'm trying to think of a nice word, but there was that whole level of greed that sets in, where it's I don't want to, that 50-50 split won't work for me, or 70-30, whatever it is. Sometimes there's a whole that inner game of letting that go and acknowledging that there's more to just delivering what the heck I have when you have a business.
Boy, that's true.
That makes sense?
Yeah, and those type of conversations really bring up fears about loss of control and fears about self-worth and self-image and self-esteem. My advice to you is to leave a little bit of money on the table for anybody that finds themselves in that position, and then work super hard to make sure that your percentage of the profits really pays off for you. So if you think it ought to be a 50-50 split and somebody else says, no, it really needs to be 55-45, especially when it comes to do with revenues and profit split, then if that's going to make your business partner that much more excited about the business, then my encouragement is to let them be excited. To leave that, to give them a little more than what you think is really fair in your own mind, if they think that it's fair, because what you really want is their best efforts. That's what you really want. You want them to be super excited about the business and putting forth, 14 hours of work every single day on the business. And if having a 55% share rather than a 50% share is going to make them do that, then your 45% of a business that's thriving and rapidly growing is going to be worth a heck of a lot more than your 50% of a business that isn't growing as much because your partner's not into it that much because they feel like they didn't get their fair share. So all of that comes into play whenever you're negotiating ownership interests with your partners. Thank you, Stephanie.
Beautifully said. Next question. How do I rationally value my time to determine what is best outsourced?
That's rationally valuing your time to determine what's best outsourced. So this is a little more detailed question than what we've addressed today. So today we've been talking about outsourcing functions. We've been talking about outsourcing sales functions, like paying commissions to an outside party, or outsourcing lead generation by paying referral fees or affiliate fees to an outside party, or by outsourcing delivery by paying 50 or 40% of our services revenue to a separate party. So, but I interpret this question as being outsourced other incidental functions like going to the tailor, or going to the office supply store, or something that is outsourcing time, like making sales calls, or you're doing other incidental stuff. We've talked in previous office hours presentations about how usually the first person that somebody hires at their business is an administrative person to do those $10 an hour tasks, so that you don't have to do them when you value your own tasks at $100 an hour. So by the way, here's a way of valuing your own time as well. If your goal is to make $100,000 a year, and you're going to do that on 1,000 hours of billable time a year, which by the way is a lot. 1,000 hours of billable time a year means 50% of your time you're billing. That means by definition that you're valuing your time at $100 an hour. So every billable hour that you have, you're valuing at $100 an hour. So take a look at those functions that you are doing and ask yourself honestly, if I were to outsource this block of 5 or 10 hours worth of stuff, does that mean that I could make $500 to $1,000 more revenue? Would I really have the additional time to do that? And if so, then it becomes a no-brainer. If you've got the business on the table that says that, man, if I outsourced all of this piddling stuff, that I could focus my time and attention on actually delivering to my clients, then it's an easy choice to make. It becomes a little more difficult choice to make whenever you're outsourcing that in advance of having the revenue on the table. It's a good guess to say that, if I outsource these $10 an hour tasks to $10 an hour people, then I would have more time to spend on the $100 an hour tasks for myself. And those $100 hour tasks might be closing deals, and it might be delivering services, and it might be developing products, especially information products, that are so much more valuable than, say, you're going to the office supply store and picking up another ream of paper. So we take a look at the time that we're spending on such things. And by the way, a time log is a really good idea to do that with. Just for 1 week, just detail out all of the time that you're spending during the day and find the time that you can allocate to other people. Maybe it's an hour, maybe it's 2, maybe it's 5 hours a week that you can allocate to a virtual administrative assistant or an in-person administrative assistant, and free up that time so you can use that time to generate leads, close deals, and deliver business. Hopefully that was helpful to you. Next comment or question, Stephanie. It's 1 o'clock. Let's take one more.
One more. I sell both products and services. How do I figure out my own business model?
I think that's the same answer that we had before, is it really does take a detailed financial model in order to figure that one out, because it is complex, because you have different cost of delivery for services than you do for products, and it really depends on what percentage of your overall revenues you expect to have from products versus services. Let me give you an example of a blended little hybrid approach. I've got a good friend of mine that earns $10,000 a day for speaking, and that's whether it's an hour-long conversation or a 4-hour-long workshop that she does. Generally, her price tag is $10,000 a day. But in addition to that, she requires that people buy a copy of her book and distribute it to everybody in the room. So if it's an audience of 200 people that she's delivering services for and the book costs $20, then in addition to the $10,000 speaker fee that she enjoys, she gets $4,000 for 200 copies of her book at $20 a piece, which she probably manufactures or gets from wherever she gets them printed at $4 or $5 a piece. So she makes an additional $3,000 worth of profit by having that product built into her service model. From the flip side, if you're selling a product and that product requires installation or integration, you might say, for example, you can buy our washing machine for $1,000, and for an extra $200, we'll come out and install it for you. That you might enjoy, $25, $50, maybe even $100 of additional profit by coupling that service with the sale of the product itself and having a total solution. By the way, Amazon is starting to do this. Amazon is starting to have their own services providers so that when they see that you've gone online and you've purchased something that they know requires installation, that they will also sell the installation services, that they lined up installation service partners that will work on a fixed fee, flat fee basis all around the country. And when you go on and buy something like a hot water heater or a washing machine or something like that through Amazon that really needs some installation or can benefit from that, you can be assured that they're going to also try to sell you installation services if you're in a major metropolitan area. If you're in Los Angeles, if you're in Houston, if you're in New York City, if you're in Chicago, that they try to couple that because they know that by selling the services that are required to go along with the product, that they can raise their revenue, enjoy greater products. And likewise, by selling the products that can go along with your services, you can raise your revenue and enjoy greater profits. Hopefully that was helpful to you today. I really enjoy talking about business models. And believe me, I was like 50 years old before I heard about any of this stuff. I think it's a real shame that it's not taught in high schools and colleges today, but I aim to fix that by teaching it to you and everybody that you know. If you found this business conversation, if you found these office hours helpful to you, please pass the word and encourage other people to come and attend live the office hours presentation or to listen to the recordings because we love to help other people. And until we meet again, this is Paul Hoyt and Stephanie saying, have a marvelous and prosperous day. Thank you. Bye-bye.